What's up, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of JT Sports Live. I'm your host, JT. Hope that everybody's doing well on this Monday evening. NFL fit officiating. This isn't going to be looking good for the rest of us that like to bet on these games, or if you're just tired of the inconsistencies with the calls. It's going to get a lot worse since the NFL can't come to an agreement with the NFL Referees Association. So just like how the players have their own association, the refs do as well, and they feel they deserve to be paid a lot higher than what the NFL is willing to pay them. And the NFL is going to bring in replacement refs, which, if you remember the last time the NFL hired replacement refs, didn't really go so well. So buckle up. We got to discuss how bad officiating is about to be this upcoming season. The Cleveland Browns have a quarterback battle between Shedeur Sanders and Deshaun Watson. And yes, believe it or not, Deshaun Watson still has opportunity to start once again, in spite of how bad he's been since getting traded to the Browns. Shedeur, he has an opportunity to win the starting job. Quote, quote, it is supposed to be a quarterback battle, but he's in another one that he has no shot at winning, just like last season. There's only one team in the NFL right now that is perfect. They have no flaws, no weaknesses at all. We're going to reveal who that team is later on during the show. We're also going to rank the teams that are under the most pressure entering the 2026 NFL draft. For some teams, they're looking to just add more talent, build more depth. And for a good amount of teams entering the draft this year, they need to have a good class in order to have a chance of having a successful season. And we're going to reveal the truth about Dak Prescott. If you live, eat, breathe, and die football, you have come to the right place. We're talking all things football, 24/7, 365 days throughout the year. NFL, college football. If you just can't get enough football in your life, smash that like button, subscribe to the channel, turn on post notifications so you do not miss when we drop new content. We're also not just a YouTube channel. We are a podcast. You can find us on Apple, Spotify, wherever you get your podcast from. You can find this episode along with all of our previous ones in audio format. If you enjoy the content, you want to support the grind, all we ask is that you take 10 seconds out of your busy life to give us a 5-star review. The links are down in the description down below. You can follow us at JT Sports _ on all social media platforms, Instagram, X, TikTok. You can find us on there. And without further ado, let's dive into it. If you thought officiating in the NFL was bad, it's about to get even worse, since the NFL right now is struggling to come to an agreement with their referees, and they're unwilling to pay the refs what they're asking for. So the NFL is just going to go ahead and hire replacement refs instead. And the last time the NFL hired replacement refs in 2012, the officiating was so bad that they ended up paying their official refs anyway after a very bad call that decided the ending of the Seahawks versus the Packers. As you probably are familiar with the name of the ending, it's called the Hail Mary. Russell Wilson throws a Hail Mary to Golden Tate. He catches it even though it really got picked off by the Packers defensive back. But the refs, being unqualified to ref football at this level, they got it wrong. And the NFL, they already have bad officiating with the inconsistencies that we have with what a catch is and what a catch isn't. Nobody really knows what a catch is. And it's insane that we don't, since catching the football is the most fundamental aspect of this sport. You think we would, by this point, with all the technology that we have, all the years of footage to go off, we have a better definition of what concludes as a catch than roughing the passer. They just pick and choose when they want to be hard on roughing the quarterback. Sometimes if you just breathe on the guy, they call it roughing the passer. They got blind eyes to obvious face mask penalties, false starts, holding penalties. It's almost if you didn't know any better, some of these referees are maybe putting money on the game, which is why there's so many missed calls and why there's so much inconsistencies and when they choose to throw that yellow laundry on the field. And with the NFL having until the end of May to come to agreement with the refs, and they're telling the owners and everybody else involved in the front offices of all these 32 teams not to talk about it, be quiet, shut up, don't say anything. They're already prepared to not pay these guys at all and try to experiment with bringing in these new replacement refs. And the replacement refs the NFL are bringing in are guys from Division I, Division II, NAIA, D3, D5. And by the NFL deciding to underpay their official refs, they want these replacement refs to screw teams out of playoff spots, since that's what's going to happen when you have bad officials. They're going to make bad calls late in close games that are going to have a lot of huge implications in them. It's going to decide divisions. It's going to cost the jobs of some of these coaches. Aaron Glenn could end up being fired because the replacement refs screwed him out of 2-3 wins. It's going to ruin betting. How are you going to have confidence that the NFL is going to honor the full integrity of the game if they're not willing to invest in making sure that they have qualified officials who can make the right calls in the right situations? They don't. They rather be cheap, and they rather ruin the integrity of their sport. And when you have bad officiating, it's just as bad as having players bet on the game, since officiating is oftentimes the deciding factor and the winner and losers in a bunch of these games. And if games are going to be lost due to bad officiating, you might as well not even invest any of your hard-earned cash, because officiating makes it so hard to determine who's going to win the game. You're more so betting on who is more likely to have a call that benefits them, that helps them win. Officiating in the NFL, if you thought it was bad, you're in for an even bigger rude awakening this upcoming season with how bad these replacement officials are going to be. Shedeur Sanders is going into this offseason entering another quarterback that he has no shot at being able to win. The Browns have hired a new head coach named Todd Monken, who was the Ravens offensive coordinator for the past few seasons. He has a pretty good track record, pretty well-respected offensive mind, won back-to-back national championships at Georgia with a walk-on quarterback as their OC, helped Lamar win his second MVP, should have won his third MVP if it wasn't for them giving it to Josh Allen out of pity. Todd Monken was a solid hire for the state of what the Browns currently are right now. Very dysfunctional. And it's evident with how dysfunctional the Browns are, because at one point a few months ago, their owner came out and said they were ready to move on from Deshaun Watson. They're willing to admit that it was a bad decision, and they're willing to take the L. Well, recently at the start of the NFL's owners meeting this week, the Browns owner, Jimmy Haslam, was asked about Deshaun Watson, and he's happy that he has a fresh start with the new head coach, and he's had a lot more time to recover, and he feels Deshaun Watson is in the best shape of his career, and he's in good enough shape to where not only is he going to be able to start for the Browns, but he's going to be the quarterback that they expected him to be when they got him in that trade for Houston that has aged terribly wrong, which means that with Deshaun Watson having pole position to be the Browns starting quarterback this year, Shedeur Sanders has no shot at starting for Cleveland this year. And Shedeur Sanders, his rookie season was all right, but it wasn't good enough to avoid the Browns' politics with Deshaun Watson. The Browns have 230 million reasons why they should give Deshaun Watson one last opportunity, since they gave him the worst contract in NFL history. And you just don't want to give up on a $230 million investment, no matter what profession, what industry you're in. You want to get the most out of this investment. So, yeah, you're going to give Deshaun Watson every opportunity to show you that he can be the quarterback of your franchise for the foreseeable future. Will he play good enough? Maybe. You really don't know at this point. Deshaun Watson had the most random fall off in the history of the NFL. Before he got traded to the Browns, he was a top 5 quarterback. He was good enough to win MVP. Then all of a sudden, he has the off the field situation with the masseuses. He's out of football for a very long time. He has to serve a very lengthy suspension. Then when he finally gets on the field for Cleveland, he can't stay healthy. Several season-ending injuries, a lot of them lower body. At this point, you probably don't think there's a shot in hell that Deshaun Watson is even a comparable starting quarterback in this league. But we've seen weirder comeback stories in the NFL. Todd Monken, to me, is a better offensive mind than Kevin Stefanski. And maybe he has a better scheme and a better system to get Deshaun Watson playing back to the level that he was when he was at his peak with Bill O'Brien and the Houston Texans. And if Bill O'Brien, who's not really that good of a coach, had Deshaun Watson playing good football, Todd Monken could be able to resurrect Deshaun Watson's career. We've seen weirder redemption arcs in the NFL. The Browns have invested a lot into their offensive line, albeit I don't think they invested that money properly. The offensive line should be at least slightly better than what it was last season. You know, the defense should be pretty okay if you can find a different replacement for Jim Schwartz if you don't bring him back at all. But Shedeur Sanders, once again, he's in another quarterback battle that he can't win. The Browns are going to lie and say that he has a shot to start, but let's be honest, when you're paying somebody $230 million fully guaranteed, you are going to give them as many chances as possible, as long as they're healthy, to start for you when you have that much invested into them. So that's when politics comes into the play. And just like last year, politics kept Shedeur Sanders from getting any first-team reps despite outperforming Dillon Gabriel all throughout OTAs, minicamp, and training camp, and throughout the season. He was better than what Dillon Gabriel was in his few starts. He was better than Kenny Pickett, who hasn't even started for nobody. He's just been a journeyman backup at this point. He's on a new team damn near every offseason. But Shedeur Sanders, he's not going to get another opportunity to get a fair shot at being a starting quarterback in the NFL until he gets traded to another team. The Browns just don't believe in him. If the Browns truly believed that Shedeur Sanders was the answer at quarterback, then they would have already gave up on Deshaun Watson. You don't keep giving this guy ample opportunities if you truly believe that Shedeur Sanders had what it took to be your franchise quarterback. Shout out to everybody that's tuned in. Shout out to Kate Roan. We greatly appreciate you with the $10 donation. She says, I love Shedeur. It's crazy to me teams aren't after him, but it might be even crazier if they put Watson back as starting quarterback. Browns going to keep being terrible, I guess. Yeah, the Browns, they're just one of those organizations that quarterbacks' careers go to die. When Shedeur got drafted to Cleveland, the idea of him being the hero of that organization, it sounded good. It sounded too good for it to actually happen, since the Browns, in reality, this isn't a Disney movie. The Browns just continuously make bad front office decisions. When they double-dip, drafted Dillon Gabriel and Shedeur, I knew Shedeur had no chance at being successful in Cleveland. But if he gets opportunity this year and the Browns have a better offensive line and Jerry Jeudy can actually catch the football, then maybe Shedeur could end up being the quarterback that the Browns have been looking for, but I strongly doubt it. Even though it's very early into the offseason, it's the first week of April, I'm ready to reveal the team that I'm picking to win the Super Bowl. That is the Rams. The Rams are the only perfect team in the NFL right now. They're the only team in the league that has no weaknesses. They fixed their only problem, which was their bad cornerback play on defense. You traded for Trent McDuffie, former All-Pro, one of the best corners in the game. You also signed another good cornerback in free agency off the Chiefs and Jalen Watson. Matthew Stafford, Sean McVay, one of the best quarterback head coaching duos in the league. They were one game shy of making it to the Super Bowl. with them improving their secondary, you expect them to be in the NFC Championship, and the only team that has a shot at beating them are the Seattle Seahawks. And with what the Seahawks have lost in free agency, several starters in the secondary, you're losing Kenneth Walker, who was the Super Bowl MVP. The NFC doesn't have a single team that's going to be able to stop the Rams from making it to the Super Bowl this year. The 49ers, they're too injury prone. The Eagles, they're falling off. There's a lot of weirdness internally with A.J. Brown being disgruntled. Nick Sirianni, just how good of a coach is he? Is he being carried by Howie Roseman assembling great teams? That division also has started to close the gap between themselves and the Eagles. The NFC, from top to bottom, there's not no team good enough other than the Seahawks to be able to stop the Rams from winning the NFC this year and making it to the Super Bowl. And in the AFC, there's really no other team outside of maybe the Denver Broncos that have a shot at beating the Rams for the Lombardi Trophy. The Rams are the clear-cut Super Bowl winner this season. There are certain teams that are just so talented, have such good quarterback play, and their head coach is so elite. When you have a team as stacked as this on the paper, it's pretty evident they're going to be the one to win it all. The Rams this year remind me of the Philadelphia Eagles from 2 years ago. Going into that season with how stacked the Eagles coaching staff was, how stacked their roster was, you knew unless they had a catastrophic injury or they just completely shit the bed, they were going to win the Super Bowl. They just were better than everybody from a talent standpoint, from a coaching standpoint, and that's what the Rams are this season. There's no team good enough to stop the Rams from winning the Super Bowl this year. The only thing that stopped them from winning the Super Bowl last year was they just didn't have a secondary, and their special teams was the worst in the league nearly. This season, the Rams have fixed all their flaws from last year, and in spite of those flaws, like I said, they were in the NFC Championship. This year, with this more than likely being Matthew Stafford's last season in the NFL, he's going to ride off into the sunset, John Elway style. They gave Matthew Stafford the kind of team that shows they're going all in because they know this is his final season. He's not going to fall off. He won MVP last year. He's been playing like arguably the best quarterback in the league since he got traded to the Rams. There's no chance that the Rams don't win the Super Bowl this year. They are the only team in the NFL that is just completely flawless with no holes at all. They need a season from hell injury-wise to stop them from winning the Super Bowl. I had a comment from a loyal subscriber that's a Raiders fan that wanted my thoughts on what the Raiders are building because his spidey senses are tingling. And his spidey senses are telling him that the Raiders are building something very special for the future. And I can't disagree with that. I wholeheartedly agree that what the Raiders have done so far this offseason, how good they're going to be when they draft Fernando Mendoza, they're going to be a problem in the foreseeable future. Raiders fans have to be patient, though. Yes, you've had false hope with the last few hires you've made at head coach. I thought that Pete Carroll was going to be pretty good for you. He was a lot worse than what anybody could have thought. With Clint Kubiak being your new head coach, he somewhat already has the right personnel for the kind of scheme he's going to be running, primarily outside zone. Ashton Genty, he's going to have a monstrous second season. Nearly 70% of his rushing yards came after contact. It's like the guy got tackled damn near every time he got the football instantly behind the line of scrimmage, and he was just running over 3-4 different guys. With the offensive line improving, with the signing of Tyler Linderbaum, what you're going to draft on the offensive line coming up, you're going to have a way better offense with Clint Kubiak calling the plays, with Fernando Mendoza giving you competent quarterback play. You're going to be good enough to where you won't be a playoff team in year one, but you could be good enough to where you're like what the New Orleans Saints were last season. You're a 6-7 win team when initially on paper, you look like probably a 5-6 win team, and the Saints were a pretty scrappy football team. That's what the Raiders were supposed to be last year with Pete Carroll. But with Pete Carroll being old, the game just passed them by, and the Raiders had to start over at building a foundation. This offseason, the Raiders have built a better foundation with the hiring of Clint Kubiak than what they did last year with Pete Carroll. They improved on all three levels on defense, making good value signings in free agency. They didn't overpay for anybody. They got pretty good, fair market value deals. You signed two very solid starting linebackers, Nakobe Dean, Quay Walker, former college teammates at the University of Georgia. There's going to be very good chemistry there. Your secondary should be improved with what you're bringing in to improve that pass rush. You retain Max Crosby. You never should have entertained the idea of trading him away anyway. I believe in Fernando Mendoza. Fernando Mendoza, he's not the flashiest quarterback prospect in the world, but he has a high floor and a moderate ceiling. He pretty much has neared his potential, but at his peak, he can give you top 7 or better quarterback play. He's Matt Ryan with a lot more mobility, has enough arm strength to make all the necessary throws, and he's a way better athlete than what people are giving him credit for. Did you guys forget on that 4th and long in the national championship against Miami when Fernando Mendoza scored a touchdown running over 3-4 of Miami's defenders? Fernando Mendoza is a very good athlete. He's kind of a sneaky version of Josh Allen, if we're being honest. Fernando Mendoza can run. He's pretty athletic, and he's a big guy. He's 235 pounds, and he's already learning the playbook, just like how Joe Burrow was before he got drafted to Cincinnati. He said, hey, let me get that playbook. I already know you guys are going to draft me first overall. Let me get a start ahead, and so we can hit the ground running. Fernando Mendoza, I wouldn't be shocked if he starts day one for the Raiders, in spite of Tom Brady having control of everything that goes on in the organization. Normally, Brady always preaches how young quarterbacks need to develop. Fernando Mendoza, though, he started in college for several years at Cal, last year at Indiana. Most quarterbacks that end up having solid rookie seasons, they've been multi-year starters. Justin Herbert, Jaden Daniels, Bo Nix. With what the Raiders already have around Fernando Mendoza, Brock Bowers, you got Ashton Genty. If you can get another quality receiver in the draft, you're going to have a solid offense. Defensively, you still have a lot to improve, but the Raiders, if they have a good draft this year with what they've done in free agency, they could be a team that is a lot better than what we expect them to be, and maybe they could find a way to get the 8 wins. Now, I think with Tom Brady's influence, despite him being a minority owner, Mark Davis allowed him to become the minority owner for cheap because he wanted Tom Brady for his football mind. Mark Davis has done a poor job of running the Raiders, and now he's just thrown his hands up and he said, hey, if there's anybody that can get us to success again, it's Tom Brady, the GOAT, the greatest football mind ever. Everything that the Raiders are doing is all because of Tom Brady. Tom Brady is running the Raiders. This is his team. And I believe that Tom Brady, with what he's done, with who he's hired in the front office, the hiring of Clint Kubiak, what they're going to do with Fernando Mendoza, how they're going to build around them. If the Raiders are patient and they don't keep swapping out these coaches like how they have these past 3 years, within 2-3 years from now, they can be a solid team. The Raiders can't expect instant gratification out of Fernando Mendoza. They can't expect to be a playoff team when you're in the toughest division in the NFL. You have 3 Super Bowl contenders in your division. You're going up against 3 Hall of Fame coaches, and you're also going up against 3 of some of the best quarterbacks in the NFL. It's not going to be easy for the Raiders to instantly be a good team right out the gate with a rookie quarterback, with a first-time head coach. I think it's very unrealistic to have expectations that high, but it's not unrealistic to expect the team to be a lot better and more competitive than where they were last season under Pete Carroll. But within the next 2-3 years from now, if the Raiders continue to draft well and they make good decisions in free agency, this is going to be a very good team. Fernando Mendoza is going to be a very good quarterback in the league. And if you got quarterback right and you got the coach right, then you normally end up being a pretty good team. And either the Chargers or the Broncos are going to end up falling off. The Raiders, they can't be bad forever. If the Hornets and the Pistons are playoff teams right now, despite how bad they've been over the past 2 decades, eventually the Raiders are going to end up getting it right. And it isn't too far away from that happening. For some teams going into the NFL draft this year, they're looking at build on depth, draft for the future. And for a few other teams, there's a lot of pressure for them to get the draft right this year, since they're going to need the draft to save them from not being that active in free agency or not having any cap space at all to make any moves in free agency. And there's no team that's under more pressure entering the 2026 NFL draft than the Kansas City Chiefs. They didn't really make too many moves in free agency. They lost a lot of talent on defense. And right now, they have a lot of holes on that side of the football. You need to improve that pass rush. You need several starters at corner. And unfortunately, the Chiefs are going to have one of their best drives in the last few years, because their past 2-3 draft classes have had a lot of whiffs. They need to come out the draft with at least 3 rookies that can have instant impact on this team this season. Because if not, you're going to be banking on the coaching of Steve Spagnuolo to elevate a defense that just doesn't have a lot of star power. You also do need to add another wide receiver. Xavier Worthy, I'm not ready to write him off yet, but so far he looks no better than just your average, small, speedy gadget guy. Rasheed Rice is solid, but is he going to miss time with suspension due to all the off-the-field stuff he has going on? They need to draft another receiver. This is a pretty solid receiver class, and they also have 2 picks in the first round. So with them picking 9th overall, they should walk away with one of the best players from this draft class. The Jacksonville Jaguars have no first-round pick in the draft this year. They are in such a bad salary cap situation that they couldn't really make any notable free agency moves. So they have to find a good replacement for Devin Lloyd in the draft this year, because if not, that defense is going to take a major step back. When Devin Lloyd was on the field for the Jaguars last year, they had a top 10 defense. When Devin Lloyd was missing time with injuries, that defense regressed a lot. And not only do they need to find a replacement for Devin Lloyd in the draft, they also need to get some more talent to beef up the interior of their defensive line and maybe get some solid pass rushing depth, because Trayvon Walker has been up and down throughout his career so far. Same thing with Josh Hines-Allen. The Jaguars, there's not too many teams that are relying on the draft to fill as many holes as what they have to. So they're under a lot of pressure entering the 2026 NFL draft right now. The Detroit Lions are under a lot of pressure entering the draft since they lost their starting left tackle, Taylor Decker. They're going to have to find a good replacement for him, or they're going to have to kick out Penei Sewell, the left tackle, and then draft a right tackle in the first round, which there's a lot of solid right tackles in this draft this year. As far as left tackles go, that's kind of going to be rolling the dice. You're better off moving Penei Sewell to left tackle, seeing how he plays there, since he came out of Oregon as a really good swing tackle, has the ability to play both. So if you can play him at left tackle and you can draft the right tackle, that's probably a better option, a better way to go. They desperately need some edge help. Other than Aiden Hutchinson, they have no other body or nobody else on that defensive line that can get after the quarterback. This isn't really that good of an edge class, in my opinion. In the first round, if you don't feel comfortable with any of the offensive tackles, then you can draft a guy like Akeem Mesidor out of Miami. Even though he's a lot older than what you would like a first-round pass rusher to be, he's one of those kinds of prospects that can come in and day one give you 6.5, 7.5 sacks, which is phenomenal production to get out of a rookie. The Cincinnati Bengals need to get every pick right in the draft this year. They cannot afford to draft any more whiffs in the first round, since they already drafted the whiff in the first round last year after he held them hostage for the guaranteed money. He didn't really do too much of anything. This year, the Bengals are lucky enough that they have a draft slot that ensures they have the ability to pick from one of the best players available on defense. You can get David Bailey, Reuben Bain, Caleb Downs. You could draft either Jamont McCoy, Mansour Delane, Colton Hood. It's impossible with the Bengals picking 10th overall in the draft this year for them to get it wrong. If you're a Bengals fan, you need to be crossing your fingers that you can either get Caleb Downs or Sonny Styles. Those are two players that have the ability to elevate your entire defense with the versatility they're going to bring, how good they're going to be, not only in coverage, but also against the run. These are two players that could become the best players at their positions for the next decade in the league. And that's why you can't go wrong picking 10th overall, because this pick ensures that you're going to have the opportunity to walk away with one of the best players available from this class. And you also need to hit on a few mid-round guys on defense also, since the Bengals, the free agency moves they made aren't bad, but they may not be good enough to necessarily move the needle to where they have a better defense than what they had last year. So you're going to have to not only get it right with the 10th overall pick, but you need to make sure that you hit on a few guys in day 2, day 3 of the draft that can be some solid starters for you. The Miami Dolphins are under a lot of pressure entering the draft this year, since they have so many holes that you got to give Malik Willis at least somebody to throw the football to. You paid this guy all this money in free agency, and you're giving the brother Tutu Atwell and Malik Washington to throw the football to. You got 11 picks in the draft this year. 2 of those 11 are in the first round. Not only do you need to get Malik Willis a receiver, but you got to get him a few more offensive linemen, and you also got to get Malik Willis a defense also. The good thing about the Dolphins being so bad is that they have needs everywhere, so you can go best player available all throughout the draft, because you need corner, you need pass rushers, you need offensive linemen, you need pass catchers, you need everything. So with where you're picking in the round 1 of the draft, you can walk away with 2 solid starters for you that could be a good foundation to your new rebuild with the new regime that you're in under new head coach Jeff Hafley. And this draft is extremely important for the Miami Dolphins, because this draft is going to be the foundation that this rebuild is built off. So if they strike oil and they get a few hits, like 4 or 5 guys from this draft class out of these 11 picks that can be solid starters or better for them, and they continue to draft that well in the next 2-3 years, then eventually the Dolphins could be a playoff team. You got to ride that quarterback, but you got to get it right everywhere else, and that's why this draft is very crucial for the Dolphins. The Baltimore Ravens are under a lot of pressure entering the draft, since instead of deciding to give up 2 first-round picks for Max Crosby, an all-pro pass rusher, you're better off using those 2 first-round picks, either trading up to get one of the premier players in the draft at a position of need, or using those picks to get another proven elite player at a position that you're going to end up using those picks to draft anyway. What the Ravens need is what they have been unable to draft successfully in the first round in the past, which is edge rusher and wide receiver. The Baltimore Ravens, in spite of how good their team is, they do need 2 starters on the offensive line. And lucky for them, this is a very good center class, but they also need a good offensive guard also. So with them picking 14, they should be able to draft one of the better offensive guards available, since offensive guards in general, interior offensive linemen, don't go that high in the draft. Normally, they start coming off the board in the later half of the first round, early in day 2 in the second round. But the Ravens, with interior offensive line being such a big need for them, you have to think that they're going to take the best offensive guard available if he's on the board at 14. I don't think at that point there's going to be an edge rusher worth taking at 14, unless you want to draft Akeem Mesidor out of Miami. That would be a very good fit. But the Ravens need to draft a rookie in the first round, 14th overall, that can help them get over the hump. Because if you're not drafting anybody that's going to be able to make an impact for you as a rookie in their first year, then you're kind of just wasting that draft pick. You were better off just using it to continue on with the Max Crosby trade. The New York Jets are under a lot of pressure in the draft this year since, for one, their defense has a lot of holes. Now, they've tried to improve that defense as much as possible, bringing in a lot of solid guys, solid vets on one-year deals, but you still need to get a lot younger on defense. The New York Jets have to avoid drafting Arvell Reese second overall at all costs. You shouldn't be using a second overall pick on a guy that, for one, isn't going to be good enough to even play that many snaps for you since he's very young. He needs a lot of development. And two, Aaron Glenn doesn't have the luxury of assuming he's going to have past this season to allow Arvell Reese to develop, since he may not even be around to help him develop around this time next year, depending on if the Jets improve or not, which is why the Jets need proven commodities. They need players that have high floors and high ceiling. And you can get that in Ruben Bain, David Bailey, Sonny Styles. Other than Arvell Reese, the New York Jets can't get it wrong picking second overall, since you can pick from any of the best defensive players in the draft or any of the best players in the draft in general this year. The Browns also had the 16th overall pick in the draft from the Indianapolis Colts thanks to the Sauce Gardner trade. So you could use that pick to maybe draft the best receiver available and solidify your offense for whoever you draft that quarterback next year, because all you really need to solidify your offense is a wide receiver and an offensive guard. And you're way closer to solidifying having a good offense than you are having a good defense. So with what the Jets have in draft capital this year, they've drafted pretty well in the past. Their team actually is a lot better than what you may think. So if they can have another good drive this year, next year, if they get a new head coach and they get it right at quarterback, they could be a playoff team. The Las Vegas Raiders are under a lot of pressure because how good they draft this year is going to determine how long it takes their rebuild. You have Fernando Mendoza, who at least should be a top 15 quarterback or better for you. And if you give him some decent wide receivers, like you bring in his college teammate, Amari Cooper from Indiana last year, and you get some more good interior offensive linemen in the draft, which there's a lot of them in this year's class, then you probably could be a playoff team as quickly as 2027. But this season is still going to be pretty tough sledding for you unless you just have one of those historically great one of those historically great draft classes where you find like 7 diamonds in the roughs that turn into 10-year starters in the league. You probably will hit on a few guys, but it'll probably take you another draft class to really be good enough to compete for the AFC West. But if you have a good drive this year, it can speed up your rebuild. But if you have a lot more misses than you have hits this year, then this rebuild could be a little bit longer than what you may like it to be if you're a Raiders fan. But these are the teams that are under the most pressure entering the 2026 NFL Draft. Dak Prescott is the most overhated quarterback of all time. Dak Prescott is an elite quarterback. What makes an elite quarterback is that they're not elite because of the system. They're elite because they are the system. And for the Dallas Cowboys, Dak Prescott is the system. Every time Dak Prescott is healthy, the Cowboys are a borderline playoff team or better. The majority of times when Dak Prescott is healthy, he's one of the best quarterbacks in the league. He's thrown for 30 touchdowns in 3 out of the last 5 seasons that he's been healthy. He's one of the most efficient quarterbacks in the league. He consistently gives you 30 touchdowns and 10, 11 interceptions. So he has very high efficiency, and he also has been held back by the incompetent ownership of Jerry Jones. Jerry Jones' refusal to hire good head coaches due to wanting to hire yes men instead has held Dak Prescott back from winning a Super Bowl. If you put Dak Prescott on the Philadelphia Eagles, they would have won the Super Bowl last year because Dak Prescott is a far more superior quarterback than what Jalen Hurts is, and the numbers reflect that. Dak Prescott has had more success despite the dysfunctional ownership of Jerry Jones than what Jalen Hurts has had, even though he hasn't had the postseason success. But postseason success doesn't define how good you are as a quarterback, since how far you go in the postseason isn't all about how good you are as a quarterback. It's about how good of a coach you also have, because the teams that go the furthest in the playoffs aren't the ones that have elite quarterback play. It's the ones that have elite coaching. That's why the Seahawks just won the Super Bowl with Sam Darnold, because Mike McDonald is one of the premier defensive minds in the game, and he's one of the best head coaches in the sport. There have been teams that have won Super Bowls with bad quarterback play, but they had great head coaches. But there aren't too many teams that win Super Bowls with elite quarterbacks carrying average, below average head coaches. Because the further you go in the playoffs, you're normally going up against good quarterbacks and teams that are just as good, if not more talented than you, that also have high-end coaching. If Dak Prescott was in a stable situation with competent ownership like the Pittsburgh Steelers, he will have way more postseason success than what he currently has. But even then, Dak Prescott is a better quarterback than Justin Herbert. Dak Prescott has had MVP caliber seasons with multiple different head coaches, and he's been more successful in the postseason than Justin Herbert. Justin Herbert has played his worst football in the playoffs. He's one of the worst postseason quarterbacks in the NFL. He choked a multiple position lead in his first playoff game against Trevor Lawrence. Then he threw several interceptions against the Houston Texans, and last year he didn't do anything against New England Patriots. And you can make all the excuses in the world for Justin Herbert not having a good offensive line, but having a bad offensive line doesn't excuse Justin Herbert throwing 4 interceptions in a playoff game. Dak Prescott has won 2 playoff games. He also has 14 touchdowns and 7 interceptions. He's one of the best statistical postseason quarterbacks in the league right now. Dak Prescott is so good that when the Cowboys lose, he's normally not the reason for them losing. The Cowboys lose because their coaching normally is average, because Jerry Jones only wants to hire yes men. Their defense hasn't really been that good since they lost Dan Quinn to the Commanders. If Dak Prescott had a team like Jalen Hurts has, then he would have already had multiple Super Bowl rings by now. Dak Prescott is an elite quarterback. An elite quarterback is somebody that can still maintain a high level of play no matter how many coaching changes he has to overcome, no matter how Looney Tunes the owner may be, because that's what an elite quarterback is supposed to do. An elite quarterback is able to overcome limitations. And Dak Prescott has had to overcome a lot more limitations being the Cowboys quarterback than what most people give him credit for being able to overcome. Dak Prescott, you won't find another quarterback that can consistently give you 30-plus touchdowns and only 10, 11 interceptions and as efficient as him that often in the league. Dak Prescott, to me, is a top 7 quarterback in the game. Just because you don't have a Super Bowl, there's only a few quarterbacks that actually have Super Bowl rings. So Lamar or Josh Allen, they're quote-unquote elite quarterbacks. They don't have no rings, but nobody uses their lack of championship success, their lack of postseason success when it comes to defining if those guys are elite or not. So let's keep that same energy with Dak Prescott. This is it for this episode of JT Sports Live. I appreciate everybody for tuning in. Shout out to Kate Rome for the donation. Shout out to everybody that tuned in. Before you get up on out of here, make sure that you smash that like button, subscribe to the channel so you don't miss when we drop new content. Follow us on all social media platforms. You can find us on TikTok at JT Sports _, on X at JT Sports _, and on Instagram at JT Sports _. I will see you guys tomorrow.